What's up, fam? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Father Brown, and confession that changed everything forever, hit me up. What made you smile today, and where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready. Because nothing in Whispers in the Fog is ever what it seems. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Silent Alibi. The early morning mist clung to the cobbled streets of Kembleford like a shroud, dulling the usual cheerful vitality of the village. In the dim light of dawn, a peculiar stillness enveloped the quaint houses, their brick facades softened by the haze. As Father Brown briskly walked towards St. Mary's Church, the damp air filled his lungs with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, a reminder of autumn's inevitable approach. Yet his mind was clouded with thoughts heavier than the mist that lingered over the village, thoughts of that fateful evening just gone. The peaceful facade of Kembleford was shattered by a piercing scream that echoed from the manse of the late Sir Reginald Ainsworth. Father Brown hurried to the scene, pushing through the gathered villagers who murmured among themselves, their faces pale with apprehension. Inside the grand, creaky manor, nestled behind the impenetrable hedgerows, chaos reigned. In the drawing room, amidst the aristocratic relics and dark mahogany, lay the lifeless body of Lady Constance, Sir Reginald's young widow, her fair hair fanned across the plush carpet, as if arranged by an unseen hand. Inspector Mallory, a stout man with a stoic demeanor, knelt by her side, examining the grim scene. "There are no signs of struggle, Father," he announced, his brow furrowing with concern. "It seems she simply fell, or was pushed. But there's something more, something disturbing." "Indeed," Father Brown replied, his keen eyes surveying the room, picking up the details that often escaped the hasty glance of others. He noticed the overturned chair, the half-empty glass of sherry on the side table, and an odd collection of letters stacked haphazardly on the mantel, as if the frantic hand had yet to arrange them. "What do you make of it?" Mallory asked, glancing up, a mixture of frustration and admiration in his voice. "Dead as she is, I cannot shake the feeling that Lady Constance's last moments were fraught with a tension that belies her calm appearance now," he pondered, stepping closer to the glass of sherry. "And this glass, it tells a story. Possibly two." The inspector quirked an eyebrow. "What do you mean? It was merely a drink." "My dear Inspector, that may be the case, but the telltale signs lie not just in what is present, but also in what is missing." Father Brown pointed towards a small silver spoon that once resided next to the glass, now conspicuously absent. "It appears she was interrupted mid-drink. Might one not assume that our dear Lady Constance had received an unexpected visitor?" Before Mallory could respond, a sharp knock from the doorway startled them both. It was Mrs. Haworth, the village gossip and the very embodiment of curiosity. Her expression shifted from concern to delight at the prospect of such a gripping tale. "Did I hear it right? Lady Constance has met her maker. Oh, how dreadful," she intoned with an exaggerated gasp, her eyes darting around the room. "Such a tragedy. But do you think it's true, what they say? How Sir Reginald died under such peculiar circumstances?" "Circumstances that need not weigh upon our investigation," Father Brown interjected, his soft voice laced with authority. "Nonetheless, your insight into the village's movements may prove invaluable. Who was with her last?" "Why, it was young Thomas Hawthorne," she replied, leaning in conspiratorially. He was to meet her for a discussion about the estate. Poor boy's been in love with her since forever, but I've heard whispers. Some say he's not quite right in the head. Father Brown made a mental note, but before further rumination could ensue, a delicate figure appeared in the doorway. Margaret, a close friend of the deceased, with tears glimmering in her eyes and a quivering lower lip. "Father," she pleaded softly, "it wasn't Thomas. I was with her just last night. We spoke of her future and his heart's desire. Ah, the essence of a silent alibi, it seems." Her confession weighed heavily in the air. "Yet how can I substantiate your claims?" "By your presence, my child, you protect him. But did Lady Constance speak of anything that might lead one to desire her death?" Father Brown's gaze settled upon her. "Any moral or financial desperation?" Margaret recoiled slightly, clutching the pearls around her neck. "Nothing that would suggest it, Father. It was simply stories, tales of tragedy that echoed through her family. Thomas had her heart, but many stood to lose much from her whimsy." Father Brown studied the young woman carefully. Her distraught expression seemed genuine, but something deeper flickered within her eyes, fear or perhaps guilt. "You mentioned that Sir Reginald's will favoured a charity. Surely such affairs might rattle a few nerves." Before she could answer, a voice reverberated through the hall, a booming laughter from the hall outside. Entering the drawing-room nonchalantly was Sir Albert, an old acquaintance of Sir Reginald, and a man whose jovial manner belied a disquieting reputation. "What a row, eh? Death in the Ainsworth household has become a terrible bore. All this fuss. You'd think we were at a funeral," he scoffed, his eyes gleaming, fixating on the crowd with predatory delight. Father Brown's instincts prickled. Sir Albert was known for mingling in circles riddled with aspirations and avarice. Having courtly friends, indeed, was quite the death knell for the easily intimidated. "This is no time for your jests, sir," he cautioned, his voice firm. "Ah, but jesting or not, I suppose a dead lady lends itself amusingly to the hellish whims of life." The laughter trailed through the manor, chilling the air. In that moment, the pieces fell into place for Father Brown. The letters on the mantel, they were clues waiting to be pieced together, a silent testimony to motives that lay undisclosed. With renewed determination, he turned to Inspector Mallory. "We spread a net wide enough, my dear fellow, while the village whispers secrets that may come to light in the unforgiving dawn. We must align the truths hidden behind canopies, lest we wait too late. Diamonds hidden beneath layers of silk, though now pale against the backdrop of blood." The silent alibis were ready to unravel as Father Brown set his sights upon the fragile tapestry of Kembleford's past, where grief and avarice intertwined with loss and pity. Outside, the mist began to thicken once more, enshrouding Kembleford in the divine stillness of promise, much like the silence that now fell heavily on Lady Constance, leaving behind echoes of questions only the dead could fathom. Chapter 2. The Confession That Never Came. The air in Kembleford was particularly still that evening, with only the distant cooing of doves breaking the quietude. The gnarled oaks flanking St. Mary's Church stood like sentinels, casting elongated shadows across the damp grass of the graveyard. In the haunted silence, a figure darted across the threshold of the church, a long coat flapping behind him as he rushed towards Father Brown, who stood contemplating the cool tombstones as if they held all the secrets of the universe. "Father, you must come quickly." The voice belonged to Thomas Whitaker, the vicar's son, his face pale and eyes wide, as though he had seen a ghost. Father Brown, accustomed to the peculiarities of human nature, sensed the swell of anxiety that gripped the young man. "What trouble stirs the night, Thomas?" he asked calmly, yet his mind raced through various scenarios, none of them pleasant. "It's Miss Goldsworthy. She was found in the chapel. I think—" Thomas hesitated, swallowing hard. "I think she may be dead." The revelation hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Father Brown felt his throat tighten as he recalled the last encounter he had had with Lydia Goldsworthy, a vibrant artist who had come to Kembleford to paint the local landscapes. She was brimming with passion, but also with a quiet desperation that suggested she was seeking more than mere canvas as she roamed the hills. They hurried into the church, stepping lightly over the creaky oak floor, distaste pooling in Father Brown's stomach. The flickering candlelight revealed a pallid figure sprawled across the altar, draped in autumn leaves. Cold phosphorescence engulfed her graceful features, and the art supplies strewn around her hinted at a struggle of sorts. "It must surely have been an accident," Thomas suggested, though his eyes betrayed the tremors of doubt. Father Brown knelt beside Lydia, gently taking her wrist. He found no pulse, yet something in her expression lingered, a trace of shock, mingled with an unspoken confession that faltered in her last moments. He turned to Thomas, whose breath quickened. "What was she working on, Thomas? Did she mention any ill fortune or fears?" "The villagers spoke of a ghost, Father," he replied, lowering his voice to a whisper. "A dark spirit haunting the chapel." "Folklore seldom serves well to explain the behavior of a living soul," Father Brown replied, his voice steady, though his mind skittered towards the supernatural implications. What prompted its resurfacing in their minds? Before Thomas could answer, the church door creaked open, echoing ominously in the quiet space. It was Mrs. Partridge, the village gossip, clutching a basket of baked goods that seemed to proclaim their normalcy against the tragedy that had unfolded. Her eyes darted around, taking in the scene like a cat surveying its territory. "Is it true? Has dear Lydia met her end? Such a talent she was. A tragedy indeed." Mrs. Partridge sighed, the baker's apron a curious contrast to the somber atmosphere. "But rest assured, Father, I'm well acquainted with rumors. She had enemies." At this, Father Brown's instinct piqued. "Enemies? Perhaps you would care to elaborate, Mrs. Partridge?" "Oh, nothing but idle chat, my good father," she said dismissively, visibly enjoying the intrigue. "You know how tongues wag in a place like Kembleford. Some said she was seen arguing with Lord Craigmore just days before her death. An artist of her caliber could hardly have escaped his ire if he considered her work unworthy of his estate." "Interesting," Father Brown mused aloud, taking note of the dim light, casting shadows upon Mrs. Partridge's face, twisting her features into something more sinister, a fleeting glimpse of her own hidden motives. Her fascination with the tale had the ring of vindictiveness about it, just as her pastries, rather too perfect, hinted at a stricter ideal of aesthetics. Another sound broke the tension, an unheard whisper of paper slipping across the shrine. Father Brown leaned over to notice a hastily left sketch, poignant and half-finished. It depicted a figure in a cloak, a spectre dancing among gravestones, curiously remiss of the artist's usual flair. The shadows seemed to swallow it whole. He glanced back at Thomas. "Where were you when all this occurred?" "I was at home reading," he stammered. "Alone, I swear. I had no idea." Yet the very moment Lydia calls out her spectres, "Lament, you think to hurry to rescue her, do you?" It was a quiet challenge that weighed heavily on the air. "I didn't know." Thomas's voice rose defensively, his anxiety erupting into anger. "How dare you? I was—" "Madness solves nothing here, lad," Father Brown interrupted gently, turning back to the altar and measuring his next words. "But it appears we are caught in the webs of silent truths. The rumor mill turns swiftly here, and Lydia's final notes might serve as the key." With a grim determination, Father Brown took the sketch into his hands, feeling the weight of its emotions pulse through him. He kept his gaze steady, searching Thomas's eyes for glimmers of truth as perplexing feelings moved behind them. Just then, the bell of St. Mary's chimed, each note resonating through the air, as if signaling the urgency of time slipping away from them. Anyone could have witnessed her last moments, Father Brown concluded, the puzzle growing more intricate, yet tantalizing. But confessing their involvement may require coaxing. We shall seek the truth, whether it be from the lips of the gossips or the shadows of the chapel. No sooner had he uttered these words than the church's shadows seemed to flicker, the atmosphere palpable with anxiety as the doorway sighed again, a shadow emerging in the threshold. A cloaked figure stood there, watching with intent. As they took a step forward, the chill in the air transformed the light of the candles. Father Brown squinted, half expecting the ghostly spectre from Lydia's last drawing to evaporate into the darkness, leaving him adrift in uncertainty. "Father Brown," the figure spoke, but before the words could complete, the tension in the church palpably thickened. And at that moment, Father Brown understood. This next twist of fate was bound to entwine their paths, perhaps with answers or deceit to unravel entirely. But one truth remained certain. The confessions might never come, or they might walk out of the darkness of unspoken burdens. The cloaked figure stepped into the light, revealing just enough to shift the pieces of the enigma in unforeseen directions. With a flicker of recognition in Father Brown's eyes, the question echoed in his mind. Would this shadow be friend or foe? The answer might come at a grave cost. But one thing was clear. The quiet village of Kembleford was only beginning to wake from its slumber, and the secrets were far from buried. Chapter 3. Shadows in the Rectory. The wind howled mournfully around the ancient oaks bordering St. Mary's Church, sending a shiver through the mist-clad graveyard. A figure hunched near an unmarked stone, and as the moonlight slipped from behind a cloud, the outline of Father Brown emerged, brow furrowed in concentration. He had received word that something was amiss within the rectory, and curiosity pulled him from the warmth of his sitting room into the damp chill of the night. Moments later, he stumbled upon a shocking sight, a tremulous silhouette against the chapel wall. The body of Martha Finch, the parish secretary, lay motionless, her once vibrant presence now diminished to a mere shadow. Father Brown knelt beside her, glancing up only when he heard the scuffle of approaching footsteps. It was Sid, the village constable, breathing heavily, with his truncheon clutched tightly in hand. "Father, is she—" His voice quavered, unable to finish the question. "She is dead," Father Brown replied, his voice steady, as he carefully examined Martha's remains. Her hands were clasped over her chest, a single sheet of parchment clutched within her grasp. The priest flicked the parchment free, revealing some hasty handwriting that sent a jolt through him. The truth, hidden in shadows, cannot stay cloaked forever. "What do you think it means?" Sid asked, peering at the note with wide, round eyes. "I am not certain yet, but it hints at secrets buried deep," Father Brown murmured, his mind racing. In the stillness, he recalled the note left behind by the enigmatic Mr. Carter, a beige envelope that had gone unexplained just days before. The riddle that had become a refrain in Father Brown's mind now took on urgency. Before he could gather his thoughts, the sound of rustling leaves drew his attention. The Reverend Aloysius Granger burst onto the scene, his portly frame silhouetted against the church's somber stone. "Good Lord! What has happened here?" he bellowed, eyes darting around, betraying both shock and an edge of fear. "Martha Finch," Father Brown replied. I know who she is," Granger interrupted, stepping closer, his brow furrowing. "I can't believe she's dead. What was she doing out here at this hour?" "One might ask the same of you, Reverend," Father Brown said, allowing a moment for the accusation to settle. "After all, you were supposed to be with the choir in rehearsal at the rectory." Granger's face paled, but he quickly regained composure. "I had a matter to attend to. This is preposterous. We must inform the authorities." As Granger fumbled with a handkerchief, wiping the perspiration from his brow, Father Brown observed the telltale signs of fraying nerves. Granger's hands shook, the mannerisms of someone who felt trapped. The pastor's angst seemed to hang in the air thick with unspoken truths. "Why the choir rehearsal, Reverend? I believe it is a remarkable sentiment for your congregation, especially given your recent troubles." Father Brown stepped closer, ensuring his tone dripped with congeniality rather than accusation. Granger stammered, I wish to alleviate some of the tension after the incident at the town hall." "The incident concerning the funds for the church repairs? I'd heard there were discrepancies," Father Brown probed, punctuating his inquiry with an unyielding gaze. "And what connection does that have to Martha Finch?" "You're grasping at straws, Father," Granger said, the depth of his voice betraying suffocating guilt. At that moment, another figure emerged from the shadows. It was Mrs. Hargreaves, the rectory housekeeper, her severe features contorted into a grotesque mask of horror. "Oh, it's terrible. What has happened? Martha must be avenged," she shrieked, clutching her apron as if it could shield her from the darkness gathering around them. "Avenged?" Father Brown echoed, studying her pale face. "Did you have a particular reason to wish harm upon poor Martha, Mrs. Hargreaves? There's been tension growing under this roof." "How dare you?" she snapped, but Father Brown noted her twitching eyes. "I had never wished her grave misfortune, but she knew what should be kept secret." "What secrets are these?" "Secrets worth dying for." His words cut through the fog, sharpened by the tension vibrating between them. Mrs. Hargreaves opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, weighing her words more carefully. "I can't tell you what you don't want to know, Father." The silence stretched taut between them until Sid's increasingly exasperated voice broke through. "We ought to get back before the whole village erupts with talk. Let the constabulary handle this." Father Brown nodded slowly, only half listening as the others moved toward the rectory. Something tugged at him from the insistence hidden in Martha's note. It wasn't merely a cry for attention, it was a forewarning. Once inside the dimly lit rectory, a shadow flickered by the flickering candlelight, darting just out of view. Father Brown moved cautiously to the study, noting a disarray among the papers. One letter, appearing slightly out of place amongst them, caught his eye. It was inked in an unfamiliar scrawl, hastily addressed. Out of curiosity and intuition, he carefully stroked the parchment with his fingers, recognizing the scent of discomfort. Then, lurking just behind the desk, something glinted, a silver key, nestled within an opened drawer, glimmering under the soft glow of the flickering flame. Father Brown seized it, an immediate sense of foreboding washing over him as he knew it could unlock doorways to the secrets hiding in the shadows. "Father, what are you doing?" Sid pressed, stepping into the doorway behind him. "We should be calling the constable in." "Indeed, Sid." Father Brown smiled faintly, holding the key at eye level, his heart racing. "But perhaps instead, we ought to unlock some truths first." And with that, the web of deceit began weaving tighter around them, shrouding Kembleford in a darkness deeper than any fog. Whatever secrets lay behind that key would soon unveil a greater conspiracy, one that might just threaten the very heart of their quaint village and all within it. Chapter 4. A Dinner Disrupted. The quiet of Kembleford was shattered by the clamorous peal of the church bell, echoing ominously through the morning mist. As clouds hung low, the air tasted of impending rain, a fitting prelude to the evening ahead. Reverend Father Brown, a small, bespectacled man with a heart heavy with the burdens of humanity, took a final glance at the stonework entrance of St. Mary's Church before heading toward the grand manor of Lord Ellingham. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly amiss. Inside the opulent dining room of the Ellingham estate, the atmosphere was thick with excitement, layered over unease. The banquet table was adorned with silver candelabras and fine china, yet the radiant beauty of the setting could not mask the palpable tension among the dinner guests. Lord Ellingham, with his frayed waistcoat and an air of weariness around his blue-grey eyes, led the evening's proceedings. "Friends, welcome," he boomed, though his voice lacked its usual vigor. "Tonight we celebrate the success of the Harvest Festival, our village bonds tighter with every year." Seated around the table was a curious mix of villagers, from the gossiping Mrs. Webley to the earnest young solicitor, Arthur Pendleton, whose opinions bore an uncharacteristic intensity. All were gathered when a piercing scream broke through the otherwise jovial ambience, slicing through the fog as sharply as the knife that would soon be thrust into the unraveling heart of the evening. Terrified, the guests turned toward the source of the sound, a tremulous maid named Clara, standing motionless in the doorway, her face ashen. "It's Mr. Pendleton," she gasped, clutching the frame of the door as if it were a lifeline. He's collapsed in the garden." A suffocating silence enveloped the room, crystallizing the horror of the situation. Father Brown's instincts kicked into high gear, his mind keenly observing the reactions of each guest. Ellingham's brow furrowed with concern, while Mrs. Webley's eyes gleamed with a mixture of morbid fascination and delight. As they rushed toward the garden, Father Brown's gaze lingered on the remnants of the dinner untouched, a vivid contradiction to the growing turmoil. The garden, usually teeming with the fragrance of roses, felt foreboding, the mist wrapping around the figures like a shroud. Mr. Pendleton lay sprawled on the dew-soaked grass, an empty wine-glass still clasped in his hand. As the doctor was summoned from the village, Father Brown knelt beside the young solicitor, noting the peculiar pallor of his skin and the faint scent of almonds that hung in the air around him. A narrow path led away from the garden to a labyrinth of hedges. Something sharp tugged at Father Brown's intuition. Was it possible that Pendleton had been poisoned during their festive dinner? Questions whirled like autumn leaves in the autumn breeze, tension weaving through the group as the doctor arrived. "Not a heart attack, I'm afraid," the doctor announced after a brief examination, "but something far worse. Mr. Pendleton was poisoned." Gasps rippled through the guests, their earlier excitement extinguished. Father Brown pushed his way closer to the others, his eyes narrowing in focus. Poisoned. How meticulous. Did anyone see him consume anything unusual before his collapse? I offered him a drink when he first arrived. Clara spoke up, her voice slightly shaking. But he declined. He had his own, I think it was wine. Who poured the wine? Father Brown asked, studying her closely. As Clara hesitated, Lord Ellingham spoke up, his voice unmistakably strained. It was my servant Watts, but he's been with us for years, loyal and conscientious. Perhaps too loyal, Father Brown murmured, glancing at Mrs. Webley, whose eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and delight at the unfolding drama. She was the one who had a way of disseminating secrets in the village. After all, the loyalties of man are seldom without their own complexities. The tension heightened as the guests muttered amongst themselves, the whispers growing more frantic, like crows gathering for a storm. Suspicion hung thick in the atmosphere. A dangerous childlike eagerness clung to Mrs. Webley, her obsession with intrigue evident. Father Brown turned to her deliberately. You seem particularly interested in this matter. Did you not have some previous dealings with Mr. Pendleton? The question struck hard, and the tension shifted like the shadows in the garden. Her smile faltered. Perhaps, but it was merely a business arrangement, nothing more. But the flicker of memory crossed her face, suggesting a more convoluted relationship. No sooner had she spoken than the doctor stepped forward, lifting Pendleton's head gently, panic propelling him to speak. He's coming to. As the young solicitor blinked awake, his eyes darted around. The manuscript, he gasped. I need to find it. Father Brown's heart raced. What manuscript? Was it the town's secret? What darker intrigue were they stumbling upon? He grasped Pendleton's arm gently and leaned in, whispering, Calm yourself, Arthur. Explain what you need. Pendleton's breaths were shallow, but panic gave way to urgency as he whispered something barely audible. The ledger? Lord Ellingham. His words hung momentarily in the chill of the garden before he slipped into unconsciousness once more. The manor's dining room loomed behind them like a fortress now, shrouded in shadows. Father Brown's mind raced, piecing together lines of complex human emotion interwoven with the mystery of life and death, the blend of envy, greed, and ambition that lay so often beneath the surface of genteel existence. Just as the guests began to murmur about the ledger, the sound of breaking glass cut through the air. Everyone turned to see Clara collapsing against the dining room door, a fallen wine decanter spilling red liquid onto the polished floor, a mirror reflecting the chaos that erupted, shouted accusations, mingling with fearful cries. Father Brown stood frozen, deep in thought, absorbing the flecks of chaos surrounding him. With a heavy heart, he recognized that the web of betrayal entwined even the most innocent of faces. In that swirling confusion, he saw a single truth emerge, a fragile connection to the unfolding drama, a clue hidden like a seed in the earth. As the guests turned their backs, turning the manor into a stage of heightened tension, a soft sound of rustling reached Father Brown's ears, muffled yet distinct. Someone was moving in the shadow at the edge of the hedge. A hooded figure slipped away, and for the first time, Father Brown understood. A darker twist loomed just out of sight. Father Brown's heart raced as he moved to follow, knowing the mysteries surrounding Lord Ellingham were only beginning to unravel. The quiet village of Kembleford had darkened, and tonight, secrets would rise like smoke. Chapter 5. The Disappearing Act. The night air of Kembleford was damp and silent, except for the faint rustling of leaves that whispered secrets in the darkness. A shroud of mist clung to the cobblestone path leading to St. Mary's Church, where a grave matter was afoot. Just hours before, a beloved local illusionist, Reginald Flint, had been reported missing during his highly anticipated performance, The Illusion of Life. Father Brown stood at the churchyard's edge, the lantern light faintly illuminating his furrowed brow. As he approached the church, the creaking of the wrought-iron gate sent chills racing down his spine. The bells had tolled just once, a warning, he thought. Inside the church, crowds gathered, their expressions a mixture of worry and intrigue, repelling the air with gossip that danced like the flickering candles. Suddenly, a voice broke through the murmur. "Reginald has vanished into thin air," cried Edith, the baker's wife, her apron dusted with flour. She was, as passionate as she was, nosy, and her eyes sparkled with a dilemma far more enticing than yesterday's loaves. Father Brown pressed forward and noted the low whispers that enveloped the churchgoers like a mist of uncertainty. "Have you no idea where he could be?" he asked, his tone gentle yet firm. Eyes shifted nervously, and Clara, a young girl with wide, innocent eyes, looked towards the altar. He said he would make his grand exit behind the altar," she stuttered. "But I thought he was kidding." Father Brown inhaled the musty scent of aged wood and candle wax, peering at the altar shrouded in lenient shadows. "A disappearing act indeed," he murmured. "With grand illusion comes a most poignant reality, one that may not be what it seems." Ignoring the gasps that followed, Father Brown moved to the side of the altar, the congregation's whispers fading behind him. Dust motes danced as he traced his fingers along the surface. In the dimness, he caught a fleeting glimmer of something, metallic. Closer examination revealed a brass ring housing a glass prism. Common props for an illusionist, but unsettling now. "Do you see?" Father Brown called back to the growing group, holding the device aloft. "The trap of illusion lies not only in what the audience perceives, it resides in the hands of the performer." "Is it evidence?" someone scoffed. "Evidence of a ruse, or perhaps a hint of darker motives?" His gaze flicked over the gathered faces, each shadowy visage revealing trepidation or deeper secrets. Miss Lavinia, a dignified woman with a reputation for being well-informed, stepped forward. Reginald had fallen into disrepute as of late. A series of mishaps and unfortunate accidents coincided with his performances. Some say he was to be exposed. His act tonight was his last chance for redemption. Father Brown noted her trembling hands, resting just momentarily on her hip. The way she framed her statements hinted at guilt or desperation. Would any of those accidents be compelling enough for someone to wish him ill? "Oh, many," chimed in Edith, venom in her voice. "From broken props to stolen tricks, the village has grown weary of his antics. Not everyone sees him as the charmer you do, Father." A chill settled in as Father Brown turned to face the congregation again. "It seems meaningful that tonight, in the throes of a performance that could lift him from this despair, he has indeed vanished." "Then what are we to do?" asked Clara, her innocence still flickering. "Look for the hidden threads in every performance, where the surface glosses over deeper truths." He stepped lightly out from the altar, adjusting his collar as he set his resolve. "Timing is crucial. We must seek the whereabouts of anyone who interacted with Reginald tonight, even those who may inadvertently provide insight into his vanishing." As the oscillating shadows flickered around them, They all ventured outside into the crisp night air. A harsh wind swept the mist, momentarily, aside, revealing the silhouette of the Kembleford Manor, perched upon the hill like a watchful giant. It was home to Lord Bertram, a patron of the arts, and Reginald's former mentor before their parting of ways, a rift that had left scars. Father Brown regarded Clara. "You know him well, don't you?" Reginald spoke fondly of Lord Bertram. "Yes, but they quarrelled. Lord Bertram thought Reginald's talent had grown pretentious, all arrived with fame, and none of the grace," she replied, her voice tinged with apprehension. "Then we must pay our respects to Lord Bertram. Perhaps he can elucidate matters further." Upon arriving at the towering manor, clouds rolled lethargically overhead as dim light seeped through veiled windows akin to fading memories. The harmonious strains of a piano echoed gently through the halls, muddying pure intent. Father Brown knocked, and the door opened slowly to reveal Lady Anastasia, her expression drawn but statuesque. "Father Brown, how wonderful to see you," she greeted, though the happiness did not reach her eyes. "We are in mourning. Reginald's disappearance weighs heavy on our hearts." She stepped aside, and the priest entered cautiously, following the music to a candlelit chamber where Lord Bertram sat, an air of dishevelled nostalgia surrounding him. Faces morphed into shadows of desperation as the wind howled outside. "Reginald had a gift," Bertram spoke, each word laced with bitterness. "But he squandered it. Perhaps he wanted to escape. Everything, even if it meant the ultimate price." "But why the act tonight?" Father Brown pressed, observing every twitch, every blink in the man's expression. Suddenly, Bertram glanced at the half-open drawer beside him, tight with secrets. Then came a sudden crashing sound from beyond the window, drawing Father Brown's attention before it vanished again into the night. A flicker of movement, perhaps more than just a shadow. Through the flickering light, a realization dawned upon Father Brown, a deep-seated inference momentarily brushing the surface of his mind. He glanced toward the window once more. The thin barrier between illusion and reality might be perilously thin, indeed. "Excuse me, I suspect Reginald may not simply be hiding," Father Brown declared as he stepped toward the door. "We must return to the church. We may not have exhausted every path just yet." But as the door creaked open, a distant scream filled the air. Suspense began to choke the words. Father Brown had yet to say. He and the others rushed outside, hearts pounding. "Past the churchyard," came Clara's frantic gasp. Father Brown dashed ahead, not knowing what they would find. But something within told him the act had not only disappeared, it had morphed into the very depths of deception. What lay beneath the veil of theatrics could spell either salvation or an unearthly reckoning. Chapter 6. A Clue. Left behind. The pall of early morning mist hung thickly in the air as Father Brown approached the old cemetery just beyond the boundaries of Kembleford. The gravestones, hunched in mournful contemplation, stood like sentinels over the still and silent world. The presence of death was palpable, yet a more immediate dread gripped his heart as he approached the grave marked Margaret Palmer. Her untimely death had torn the village apart and raised questions more unsettling than death itself. With the church bells chiming softly in the distance, Father Brown knelt before the grave and bowed his head in silent prayer. It was when he rose that a chilling sensation washed over him. Just beneath the fresh soil, a glint of something unusual caught his eye. He knelt down again, peeling back the dirt with fingers that trembled slightly. As the last of the earth crumbled away, he revealed a delicate brooch, a gold locket intricately adorned with a sapphire. He cradled it in the palm of his hand, the chill of the metal sending a shudder through him. "This does not belong here," he murmured to himself. The locket was unmistakably exquisite, yet its unceremonious hiding place spoke of desperation and fear. Father Brown's sharp mind flickered with the implications of this discovery. If Margaret had been found wearing it, it could potentially unravel the truth behind her murder. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps drew his attention. He turned to see Lady Di Patterson, rushing down the cobbled path from the manor, her expression fraught with anxiety. Father Brown had known Lady Di for many years, a wealth of grace and elegance often belied by her sharp wit and thorough knowledge of Kembleford's social dynamics. "Father Brown," she called as she neared, "I feared you would be alone in this ghastly place." "Lady Di," he replied, deftly concealing the locket in the folds of his robe. "What brings you here?" "I came to pay my respects to Margaret," she said, her voice trembling. "And to warn you. There are whispers, Father, whispers of danger. You must be careful." "Whispers?" he prompted, intrigued. "What sort of danger?" She glanced around the cemetery, her demeanor growing increasingly furtive. "You have been digging deep, too deep, Father. Some truths should remain buried. Not all who walk in this village have honorable intentions." "Is that so?" he said, tilting his head in thought. "You speak of danger in the air, yet you seem to carry the burden of a secret, my lady. Perhaps you should share it." Her eyes darkened, and a soft sigh escaped her lips. "I wish I could, but secrets always come with consequences, wounds that never heal." As she turned to leave, Father Brown spoke quickly. "Wait. If the truth leads to danger, then understanding it may help prevent more tragedy. Who else knows of this danger?" "Just those who are close to Margaret, I imagine. The business at the manor is complicated," she replied, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. Whispers of greed and betrayal. As the last echoes of her footsteps faded into the mist, Father Brown clutched the locket tightly in his hand. His mind churned over Lady Di's words. What could lie beneath the surface of her carefully composed exterior? The brooch could have belonged to anyone, yet its presence at Margaret's grave suggested an unsettling connection. Father Brown returned to the parish church, where the scent of old oak and candlesticks filled the air. He took the locket from its concealment and inspected it closely. Inside, either side of the locket contained a portrait, one of a man and the other of a woman. They bore no names, no markings, but there was something hauntingly familiar about their features. "Good morning, Father," came a cheerful voice. It was Mrs. McCarthy, the church's devoted housekeeper, bustling in with a basket of fresh flowers. "Good morning, Mrs. McCarthy. Tell me, do you recognize this?" He held out the locket, his heart racing at the thought of a potential connection. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, Father Brown did not like the way her smile faltered. "No, no, Father. I can't say that I do. But how lovely it is," she said, her voice becoming a touch too high-pitched. The way she fiddled with the cloth in her hands ignited a spark of suspicion within him. "You seem quite perturbed. Does it not remind you of anyone?" "Oh, I get a vague sense, perhaps. After all, the village is full of history," she said, hastily walking to arrange the flowers. "People have been buried with treasures. Why risk meddling in their final resting places?" "Indeed," he said, his voice measured. "Yet, the investigation demands our utmost diligence. Rest assured, Mrs. McCarthy, I have my fair share of secrets too. Suddenly, the church door swung open, letting in an unwelcome gust of cold wind, shaking the dust motes swirling in the stained glass. In stepped Constable Mallard, his brows knit tight and his breath coming swiftly. "Father, we need to speak at once," Mallard urged, his voice grave. "There's been another attack in the village. Somebody is coming for the people who knew Margaret, people you've been close to." Concern etched on Father Brown's face, but his thoughts lingered on the locket and its implications. Lady Di, Mrs. McCarthy, the secrets buried in the quiet corners of Kembleford, each connection was leading him closer to the crux of the matter. "Tell me everything," Father Brown urged, his detective instincts ignited. The threads wove tighter, and with the new threat looming, it became clear. The fog of secrecy was growing thicker, and a reckoning was near. As they convened, the very air seemed charged with anticipation, until it became palpable. The turning point was nigh, with dark secrets waiting to be unearthed. In the heart of Kembleford, the truth was a dangerous thing indeed, and Father Brown was prepared to plunge deeper into its shadows. Chapter 7. Revelations of the Heart. The air was thick with mist as Father Brown made his way down the village lane, the gravel crunching softly underfoot. This was the hour when Kembleford's quaint charm transformed into an eerie landscape, shadows flickering against the church wall, and the distant bell tower tolling a mournful chime. Yet the unease that clung to him was not birthed from the damp chill, but from the grim revelations that had come to light since the tragic murder of Sir Mortimer Blake, the local baronet. As he approached the manor, its once stately facade looked forlorn, the shutters creaking in the wind like mournful spectators of tragedy. Clutched in his hand was an envelope, unmarked save for the scrawled name Elena. It was a letter given to him by Mrs. Carraway, the baronet's housekeeper, her eyes wide with a fear he seldom encountered. She had discovered it hidden beneath the floorboards of the study where Mortimer had met his untimely end. "Father," she had whispered, dark curls framing her anxious face. This was meant for her. For Miss Eleanor now, standing before the manor's door. Father Brown hesitated, recalling the haunting look in Mrs. Carraway's eyes. Was this letter a testament of love or an instrument of betrayal? He inhaled deeply and rapped his knuckles sharp against the wood, the sound echoing hollowly inside. Moments later, the door creaked open to reveal Lady Isabella, the baronet's widow, her features pale and drawn, like wax, beneath an unforgiving candle. "Father Brown," she uttered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "what brings you to the manor at this late hour?" "Forgive me, Lady Isabella," he said, stepping into the dimly lit hall, "but I came across a letter addressed to Miss Eleanor. I believe it might shed light on our investigation." At the mention of Eleanor, a slight flicker of emotion crossed Isabella's face. "Miss Eleanor Carraway?" she asked, her voice now laced with tension. "What business could a letter have with her?" "Matters of the heart, it seems," Father Brown replied, his gaze steady. "What do you mean?" Isabella asked sharply, her composure slipping. "Please, allow me to speak with her," he pressed, sensing the unfolding complexities. "I believe the truth often hides behind what we dare not reveal." Isabella hesitated, glancing anxiously toward the ornate staircase that spiraled into a darkness of secrets. "Very well, but do be careful, Father. The heart can be a treacherous ally." As Father Brown ascended the stairs, the heavy silence pressed in around him. He approached Elena's room, a light flickering from beneath the doorway, illuminating curious shadows that danced like wraiths upon the walls. Upon knocking, the soft call of "Come in" beckoned him inside. Elena sat at her writing desk, an ink-stained sheet of paper before her. Her expression was one of relief mixed with apprehension as Father Brown entered. "Father, to what do I owe this surprise?" "This letter," he began, holding it up with reverence, "was intended for you. It may reveal more about your relationship with Sir Mortimer than you would wish to share." Elena's face drained of color. "Mortimer? Why on earth?" "Perhaps it speaks of affection," he interjected gently, "or perhaps something darker. I suppose I must ask if Sir Mortimer had been unfaithful." "No," she interjected hotly, her cheeks flushing. "Mortimer he was a good man, always charmed by the world. But there is a but," he prompted softly, observing the tremor in her hand as she gripped the desk. His affection turned possessive. "It was unsettling," she confessed, her voice breaking. "He accused me of keeping secrets, and after he met with Lady Isabella, he grew volatile. But I loved him. I would never betray him." Father Brown sensed the simmering undercurrents, the raw emotion intertwined with her confession. "Perhaps this letter could tell us more. What do you write about, I wonder?" Eleanor's gaze shifted to the paper before her, and she struggled with the weight of truth. "I write my fears, not my desires," she admitted. "I fear this town, and Mortimer's shadows. I often found solace under the old oak in the churchyard, where the villagers wouldn't find me. It was there that I... Just then, a deafening crash echoed from below, startling both of them. The sound of shattering glass followed, laced with the sudden cry of Lady Isabella. "Elena!" she screamed. Father Brown hurried from the room, his heart pounding. He raced down the staircase, Elena close behind him. The din led them to the drawing room, where a shambled sight greeted them. The parlor window lay broken, glass scattered like shattered promises, and across the room staggered Lady Isabella. "Father, there's someone outside. I swear I thought it was him," she cried, her voice trembling as she gestured wildly to the mangled garden visible through the opening. Father Brown moved to console her, but a word caught in his throat. "Who, my lady? Who did you see?" Abruptly, through the chaos, Elena produced an object from her pocket, a pendant, glittering ominously against the backdrop of gloom. "I found it in Mortimer's study," she said, her voice wavering. But it's not a token for me. It's for Isabella." Misdirection flickered in the air, tangling with confusion. Their eyebrows knitted together, each woman's gaze bore a mixture of suspicion, heartache, and jealousy. Yet far more lay hidden beneath the surface. Father Brown felt an unshakable tension rise. "The truth lies in the heart," he murmured quietly, piecing together the conflicting lives intertwined within the manor. The wind howled outside, the night cloaked in mystery, and as the scene unfolded, he could feel the gnawing certainty that something darker was stirring within Kembleford. The revelation of the heart was swiftly approaching, and as he turned, he realized the profound shadows lurking within. These walls were only beginning to unveil their secrets. What had been hidden would soon come to light. What revelations awaited in the depths of the soul? And suddenly, echoes whispered through the mist. Would the heart lay bare, or would it carry its secrets to the grave? Chapter 8. The Locket of Remorse. The village of Kembleford lay cloaked in an early morning mist, a shroud that muted sound and softened the sharp edges of the world. Father Brown halted before the graveyard gate, his figure small against the looming stones of St. Mary's Church. His heart raced, not from the chill in the air, but from the urgent whisper of intuition urging him onward. It was here that he felt most alive, where the delicate dance of life and death played out in poignant hues, revealing the truths hidden beneath the surface. As Father Brown stepped inside the churchyard, he was drawn to a commotion near a freshly disturbed grave. A crowd had formed, mostly comprised of the villagers, their faces shadowed by worry and curiosity. At the center, Inspector Crabbe, red in the face and flustered, waved his arms as he spoke sternly to Mrs. Agnes Dobbins, the widow of the late Harold Dobbins, whose recent murder had shaken the community to its core. "Just let me see it," Mrs. Dobbins exclaimed, her eyes wide. "I must see what has become of my husband." Before Father Brown could interject, a gasp erupted from the gathering. The crowd parted, revealing a small object nestled in the earth. Father Brown felt the air grow still, drawing closer to examine what lay before him. Beneath the loose soil shone a locket, glinting like a frightened bird caught in the dawn. He reached down, brushing away the dirt, to reveal a finely crafted piece, its intricate design marred by the remnants of graveside soil. "What have you found, Father?" Crabbe asked, his voice tinged with both authority and curiosity. "Only the truth such trinkets wish to keep hidden," Father Brown replied, his eyes narrowing on the locket. He opened it gingerly, revealing a tiny portrait of a young woman, her serene smile striking a stark contrast to the scene. Yet the locket held another significance. Inscribed on the back were the initials E.D. Edith Dobbins, Crabbe muttered. Could it belong to the widow or— "No," Father Brown interrupted softly. "I suspect it belonged to someone else entirely. A clandestine lover, perhaps." As the murmur of speculation grew, Father Brown turned his attention to Mrs. Dobbins, whose face had paled at the mention of the initials. "You knew of someone named Edith, did you not?" he asked gently, seeking the truth behind her discomfort. Mrs. Dobbins hesitated, glancing around nervously, flesh twisting as if she were caught in a spider's web of her own. "Making that name. It's nothing but a coincidence. Harold and I had a good life together. Isn't that right, Claude?" she exclaimed, glancing sharply at her brother, who stood nearby, arms folded tightly over his chest. Claude Dobbins grunted, his brow furrowed. "Nothing more than a knave's trick, if you ask me. Harold never laid his eyes on another woman. He was devoted." "And yet he's dead," Father Brown interjected, his tone even. "And the events that lead us here carry with them ghosts of infidelity and vengeance. Mrs. Dobbins, please enlighten me about this woman." A sudden gust swept through the churchyard, sending a shiver through the crowd. "Edith was Harold's childhood friend," Mrs. Dobbins admitted slowly, her voice breaking. "She left Kembleford long ago, despairing over some trivial quarrel, but she returned only days before." Her voice trailed off, shadowed by the gravity of her implication. "To what end?" Father Brown prodded, watching her closely. "What do you suspect happened? Did she confront your husband?" "I think," Mrs. Dobbins swallowed nervously, "I think they may have rekindled their old flame. I saw them in town. My heart sank. I lost him then, even before the murder." Inspector Crabbe shared a glance with Father Brown, their minds racing through the possibilities entwined within the narrative. A passion gone awry, jealousy rearing its head. Those were motives potent enough to kill. Just then, a figure emerged from the mist, a tall landscape of despair. It was Edith Dobbins, her face pale and her eyes filled with a haunting sorrow. "Edith," Claude barked, "what brings you back to this cursed place?" "Haven't you spelled it out yet, Claude?" Edith replied, her voice tremulous. "My heart has dwelled in these corners long enough. I returned to face my past. Harold's murder. I loved him, but it was never meant to end this way." Father Brown sensed the current of emotions coursing through the courtyard. Edith's love, a potential motive. Mrs. Dobbins's jealousy, a steep cliff of vengeance where one could easily tumble. The truth lay thick in the air, elusive, like the mist itself. "Edith," Father Brown spoke, his voice steady, "what were you doing the night of the murder?" "I was at the pub, drowning the shame of a life gone awry," she answered, her chin quivering. "I hardly remember reaching home." "Did you see anyone else? Perhaps a figure that left the pub shortly after you?" Willing to pin the murder on me, she shot back, temper flaring like fire to the tinder. "I was a grieving guest, not a suspect." "We'll discover the truth," Father Brown reassured her. "But first, we need that locket's importance clarified." He turned to Crabbe, eyes sharp. "If I am not mistaken, this is no mere necklace. It's a key to understanding the tumult that led us here." As the inspector pondered the locket's resurfacing alongside lingering emotions, the clouds overhead shifted, a dark harbinger of storms to come. Father Brown felt it within his bones. Time was running out. If the murderer remained hidden, the village risked brooding chaos, and soon careless whispers around them would transform to dreadful truths. "Tonight, I will call upon someone who might illuminate this mystery further," he said. "Someone who may hold the key to both love lost and remorses unlived." With that, the villagers shivered in anticipation, their gaze shifting uneasily between Father Brown, Claude, Edith, and Mrs. Dobbins. A storm brewed, not just in the sky, but within each heart, clinging to shadows of remorse and flickers of suspicion. Thus, in the haunted silence of Kembleford, with secrets thick around him, Father Brown stepped away from the graveyard, determined to unravel the taut threads of emotion and unearth the clarity that lay buried within the secrets of the locket. As he walked deeper into the mist, the contours of his thoughts sharpened, unaware that the finality of truth awaited him around the next corner. Chapter 9. The Final Gathering. The stillness of the village hung heavy in the autumn air, like the unease that had taken hold since the murder of Lady Angeline Hartley. Father Brown, with his customary worn cap and dark coat, ambled along Kembleford's cobbled streets, ruminating over the history of the manor that loomed at the edge of the churchyard. Its ivy-clad stones whispered secrets, and an angry mist crept in from the pond, swallowing the forgotten corners of this quaint hamlet. Suddenly, a shrill scream pierced the silence, a sound that could silence the chattering crows. Father Brown quickened his pace, heart racing as he approached the entrance to St. Mary's Church. The heavy oak doors stood ajar, creaking strangely in the brisk wind. Inside, he was greeted by the sight of Lavinia Drew, the village's taciturn herbalist. Trembling, her finger pointed toward the altar. "Father, it's dreadful," she stammered, her salt and pepper hair wild, a stark contrast to her usually composed demeanor. "I found her. I came to gather herbs, and she lay there, so still." Her voice trembled, each syllable dripping with horror. "Who is it, Lavinia?" he asked, stepping cautiously over the threshold, his breath hitching slightly at the sight before him. The altar cloth was streaked with crimson. and there, sprawled at its base, lay Gwendolen Tilstone, an enigmatic widow who often communicated her disdain for the village's trivialities with a wry smile. Only now, beneath the flickering candles, she looked anything but amused. Father Brown knelt, observing the scene with careful precision. Not far from the lifeless body, a single white lily lay, pristine, against the dull floor. A delicate scattering of dust near a heavy iron candlestick indicated a struggle, and as his eyes darted about the sanctuary, they caught sight of Gwendolen's notebook, which had tumbled from her clutch, pages spilling out like secrets prematurely revealed. "Father Brown," Lavinia whispered, her eyes wide, as she weighed the gravity of the unfolding tragedy. "What does this mean? Who availed themselves of such audacity?" He contemplated the scene, contemplating scents, shapes, and sounds, before looking back at Lavinia. "Motive, my dear Lavinia. There exists the keys to this mystery in the most human of emotions: jealousy, fear, love." "But love? Who could love her enough to kill?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. "Consider the gala," he replied, thinking of the upcoming event at the manor that had prompted whispers throughout the village. Though Gwendolen was a figure of mockery, she had a talent for attracting secrets, intimacies that might incite jealousy. The tension thickened as Lavinia drew closer, her hands trembling. "She despised most, Father, the heartless widow. Didn't she openly claim her marriage had been a wretched affair? Yet she also posed as a confidant to those who needed her," he replied, noticing a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth, revealing something unsaid. They turned to her, but little do they know, she wove her own webs. "We must gather the others," Lavinia said uneasily. "Confound it, I cannot be in this house of God alongside a body. If she has been murdered, then it seems the killer knows more than we think. But let us not panic," Father Brown soothed, carefully collecting the notebook as they exited the dim interior, blinking against the sudden brightness. Outside, the sun had surrendered to a heavy cloud cover, and the villagers gathered, for morning mass, were thrown into turmoil. Father Brown could feel the collective shock, a disquiet that rolled across the crowd. He scanned their faces, each one shrouded in a cloak of apprehension, before his gaze landed on Roger Tilstone, Gwendolen's late husband's cousin, one who had arrived recently to stay at the manor. "Roger," Father Brown called, beckoning him forward. "What do you know of Gwendolen's last days?" His face paled, and amid the unfurling whispers, he began to stammer. I didn't see her much, but her tone at the gala was strange." "Strange? How?" Father Brown pressed, noting something lurking behind the man's gruff exterior. "I overheard her speaking to Lady Hartley about an investment, something that could ruin the manor, and in turn, Kembleford," Roger replied, avoiding Father Brown's searching gaze. "It was an article about the estate, an inheritance." "Did Lady Hartley know the implications of this?" Father Brown asked, feeling a sudden flicker of insight. "I think she did," Roger admitted, voice faltering. "Maybe Gwendolen intended to use it against her." The gears in Father Brown's mind began to turn rapidly. Then her enemies were vast. Jealousies could be allies to find a victim, but it appears the heart has another story, Father Brown mused, contemplating Roger's concealed emotions. A cloak of friendship while daggers were at play. How curious. As they spoke, the muffled sobs of villagers surrounded them, twisting the atmosphere into something dense, foreboding. Roger's discomfort was palpable, yet there was an urgency clinging to him, an undisclosed motive swimming beneath his facade. Out of the corner of his eye, Father Brown caught sight of a figure approaching. Lady Hartley, her face pale, yet resolute. "Father, there's something crucial you must know," she announced breathlessly. "I have found something." At that moment she brandished a stained, crumpled letter, a scrawl barely legible, but addressed to Gwendolen, and signed with a name that sent a chill through the air, one believed long buried. The crowd parted, and all eyes turned towards Father Brown, his mind racing. The tangled web of deceit was drawing tighter with each revelation. "Indeed," he said, eyes narrowing as he quickly processed what this meant. "We must gather, for it seems our final mystery is at hand. The truth is closer than we think, each thread leading us back to the very heart of ambition and betrayal." The air felt brittle, the spectre of the past looming larger as Lady Hartley moved to speak. But before any secrets could unfurl, a crash echoed through the churchyard. A body had tumbled to the ground. A figure once thought safe now sprawled among the gravestones, and the weight of discovery loomed heavier than ever. Chapter 10. The Illusion of Control. The chilling morning mist shrouded the village of Kembleford, veiling its ancient church tower in a spectral embrace. As Father Brown walked along the cobblestone path, he couldn't shake the feeling that something twisted lay beneath its quaint, picturesque exterior. He was lost in thought about the recent events in the village when a shrill scream shattered the eerie silence. Father Brown's heart raced as he hurried towards the sound, recognizing it as the voice of Mrs. Hargrove, the village librarian. There, beneath the gnarled branches of an oversized oak, lay Arthur Penrose, local artist and eccentric small-time philosopher, sprawled within a tangle of twigs and grass. He was lifeless, his paintbrush still clutched in one hand, splatters of vibrant colors surrounding him like a medieval tapestry. The town had not expected the likes of Arthur, cloaked in his flannels and berets, to meet his demise so harshly. Father Brown knelt next to the body, observing the peculiar angles of his limbs and the blankness of his once vibrant eyes. Mrs. Hargrove stood nearby, her hands trembling like autumn leaves. I saw him painting here yesterday, Father," she stuttered, her voice wavering like the remnants of early fog. "He always claimed he felt the spirit of art here. Someone must have done this to him." Father Brown's brow furrowed in thought. Arthur had been full of charm, but even fuller of strange philosophies. He had become a local fixture, though some, like the formidable Lady Clarence, had found his musings tiresome. Lady Clarence despised what she termed the lower arts, and often argued with Arthur during the local meetings of the Kembleford Arts Club. What lay behind the canvas-splattered body was more intricate than mere jealousy, Father Brown sensed. Knowing the village so well, every creak of its old manor houses, every shadow of its ancient trees, he also understood human nature's convoluted pathways all too well. The villagers gathered, gossip bubbling and intertwining with dread. Underneath their healthy curiosity, Father Brown could see the tremors of tension, fear threading each tightening face. The very illusion of control that each villager held over life, art, and their comfortable existence had been snatched away. "Fetch Mr. Rollins, the constable," Father Brown commanded authoritatively, an echo of concern ringing in his voice. Just as he made his request, Jane, the innkeeper's daughter, rushed forward, her hair flying wild. "Father, I saw something. Just before he was found, I noticed Lady Clarence leaving the grove." "Leaving the grove," Father Brown repeated, his eyes narrowing in thought. "What time did you see her?" "Oh, it must have been around cocktail hour. She'd been out for her nightly stroll, no doubt. Her voice rose above the murmurs. I thought it rather unusual she was so far from her own garden, but who could imagine? Her words faltered, pulling back from the edge of an accusation. Murder has a way of suspending belief, particularly in people's hearts, Father Brown mused, watching the villagers' reactions closely. Some scowled at Jane's comments, unsure if they should believe her. Others, though practically noble in disposition, appeared keen to accept any narrative that could justify their growing fears. He approached Arthur's body, kneeling once again with reverence. Something about the corpse's arrangement. One shoe, half sunk into the earth, the other lying askew with splashes not only of paint, but also something darker, mingled like forgotten memories. "Father, look!" cried Mrs. Hargrove suddenly, pointing at a small, folded piece of paper peeking from the pocket of Arthur's jacket. He gently unfolded it, revealing a series of meticulous notes in Arthur's fine, loopy script. The notes detailed his thoughts on the nature of beauty, but one phrase jumped at him. Control is but an illusion in the face of true inspiration. At that moment, Constable Rollins arrived, breathlessly waddling through the congregating crowd. "What seems to be the trouble here, Father?" he asked, his eyes darting nervously about. Father Brown leaned in slightly toward Rollins, holding the notes delicately. "As you can see, dear Constable, our artist has sketched his own end in a manner peculiar to this very moment. I suspect that the illusion of control he so eloquently mentions leads us to an unseen hand stirring beneath the surface." "Do you believe this is a murder, Father?" Rollins asked, confusion painting his rugged features. "Oh, without a doubt. Just as those who create splendid works of art often find they create their own prisons, so too did Arthur. The question lingers, however, is it the artist's muse that has unbound him from life, or rather a rival's envy that wrapped its grip around his spirit?" Tensions spiked within the group, accusations flickering through the crisp air. Art, beauty, and ego intermingled, swirling, like the mist around them. Lady Clarence, overhearing the murmurs, stepped forward, powdering her delicate wrist. "It is rather barbarous to accuse me of such a thing. I despised Arthur, yes, but I would not stoop to murder." Her lips curled into a disdainful smile, revealing far more than she intended. "I suspect, my lady, this is but the first thread of a larger tapestry woven from the desires and deceptions of many," spoke Father Brown, igniting a firestorm of suspicion. "Remember, the illusion of control often accompanies those who harbor their truest ambitions behind masks of decorum." With that, an unsettling chill swept through the crowd. As whispers engulfed them, Father Brown turned, a sudden realization igniting his inner resolve. Just before he departed, he glanced back at Arthur's body. "We must not ignore the canvas, nor the striking brilliance of the colors. Each stroke of life tells a tale, and his may hold the final clue to understanding who truly seeks to regain control." His heart thrummed with the thrill of mystery as he retraced his steps back to the churchyard, exhilarated and yet weighty with a burden of realization. Something lay smothered beneath layers of deceit, and he'd soon expose it. As he walked away, one singular thought echoed in his mind. In the realm of art and life, those who believe they master control often find it is merely a fantastical illusion, waiting to unravel through their own imperfection. Father Brown turned to the spectre of the church as the haunting bell tolled. Would the next chapter of this tragedy reveal itself in the murmurings of the village, or would it lead to darker depths? With one last glance at the faded colors on the ground, He knew he would soon need to unearth the sacred truth behind Arthur Penrose's end, as it was surely tied to what lay beyond that illusion. Chapter 11. The trap is set. The air hung heavy in the quaint village of Kembleford, a foreboding mist curling around the ancient stone of St. Mary's Church. Father Brown adjusted the collar of his woolen coat, sensing the palpable tension that seeped not only from the encroaching fog, but from the very hearts of the villagers congregating for the funeral of the late Lord Abernethy. Of late, the nobleman had been the centre of controversy, with his wealth, power, and above all, his suspicion of nefarious deeds fading like the last echoes of the tolling bell. As the mourners began to gather, whispers rippled through the crowd, and Father Brown intercepted a particularly sharp comment from Mrs. Hargreaves, the baker's wife, whose frothy apron did little to mask her sharp tongue. I say it was about time Lord Abernethy met his end. The man was a true demon in fine clothes. Her voice, laced with bitterness, echoed against the stone walls of the church before she departed, leaving behind vapid silence that only deepened Father Brown's suspicions. A shiver ran down his spine as he remembered the events leading up to Abernethy's untimely demise, how he had been found lifeless at the estate, bizarrely sprawled near the hearth with a twisted expression that suggested not merely death from frost, but malicious intent. The village was rife with conjecture, pointing fingers at a weaver's daughter gone rogue, or a disgruntled servant seeking revenge, but Father Brown felt a more convoluted thread was woven through those sentiments. After the last prayer had been said, Father Brown made his way to the estate, flanked closely by the villagers who clamoured for a glimpse of the grand manor, its once proud facade now a skeleton of whispered secrets. As he approached the vast oak doors, he noticed two figures lingering by a statue. Mrs. Abernethy, clad in black, her tear-streaked face betraying a mix of grief and unguarded fury, and Sir Geoffrey, the Lord's nephew, a man perpetually overshadowed by his uncle's wealth. Both were hiding their motives behind masks of decorum that slipped whenever they thought no one was watching. "Father," Sir Geoffrey greeted, his tone conveying a fragile indignation, "surely you must understand. My uncle had numerous enemies. He was a ruthless man who took everything from those less fortunate than him. And yet vengeance is seldom a solitary act," Father Brown remarked quietly, carefully observing the young man's shifty gaze, the twitch of his fingers betraying a deeper concern mingling with his bitterness. What a tragic fate it is when greed breeds hatred. Mrs. Abernethy's frigid laughter cut through the air like a knife. "You misjudge my late husband, Father. His spirit was tarnished, but it only exacerbated the faults of those around him. You should look closer, perhaps," she said, dismissing Father Brown with a wave that felt akin to swatting a fly. Father Brown's brow furrowed in thought as he noted the discomfort radiating between the widow and her husband's nephew. Were they allies against the spectre of Lord Abernethy's tyranny, or was a darker alliance simmering beneath the surface? Later that evening, Father Brown returned to his modest cottage, but the enigma of Abernethy's death gnawed at him as insistently as the swirling mist outside. He sat down with his ledger and began to jot down the facts, drawing forth secondary motives hidden behind the veil of feigned sorrow. He needed a strategy, a trap to ensnare the true culprit lurking in the shadows. The following day brought with it an unexpected surprise. A summons arrived from Mrs. Abernethy requesting Father Brown's presence at the estate. Under the guise of offering his condolences, she proposed a private meeting, claiming she had valuable information regarding her husband's death. His instincts peaked. With trepidation, he entered the hallowed halls once more. "Father Brown," she greeted, her demeanor softening, a feigned vulnerability lurking just beneath her polished exterior. "I fear for my life, and I trust few within this house. There are truths I feel compelled to share, but only with someone I can count on." "Go on," he coaxed, observing her reaction. Did she seek solace, or was there an ulterior motive at play? Mrs. Abernathy produced a delicate handkerchief, her hands trembling as she revealed an intricately folded piece of parchment. "This was hidden among my husband's belongings. I believe it contains his last thoughts, a confession of sorts." Her voice trembled, and Father Brown caught a faint glimmer of desperation in her eye. He took the parchment and unfolded it with deliberation. The handwriting struck him immediately. It was shaky, scribbled in haste. He scanned the contents, noting cryptic references to betrayal, names of individuals that left him bewildered, and a vehement warning. But as he turned the paper, a hidden message teased at the corners of his mind, something that could implicate more than just Lord Abernathy. Before he could ask, the stirring of excitement transmuted into sheer terror as the door to the study burst open, revealing Sir Geoffrey, panic etched upon his face. "What have you done?" he gasped, locking eyes with his aunt. "You shouldn't have involved him." "Geoffrey, I'm only trying to protect—" she began before the nephew interrupted, his voice rising with frantic intensity. "Protect us? Or yourself? You're speaking of matters that should remain buried." Father Brown stepped between them, acutely aware of the shifting allegiances in the room. The revelations threatened to hang in the air. The trap he had anticipated had suddenly ensnared them all by a mere parchment. The tension went taut like a stringed bow, and Father Brown knew, with an unsettling certainty, that whatever formed the basis of Lord Abernathy's treachery reached far deeper than he had imagined. But as unsettling as the secrets lay before him, he felt a sudden foreboding chill sweep through the manor as the lights flickered above, plunging them into darkness. "Father Brown," Geoffrey called out, his voice now laced with fear, "we must go." As they rushed to find the door, the sand beneath their feet gave way, and with it, an unsettling realization settled upon Father Brown's brow. Innocence had departed, trust had fractured, and with every heartbeat, the truth clawed ever closer, its hand stretched to drag them into the depths of the storm brewing from Abernathy's impending legacy. But they were not alone in the dark. A soft creak from the adjacent room erupted into an echo. A shadow spilled into their haven of trust, and Father Brown, heart drumming in his ears, braced for the worst. The trap was set, and they were all caught within it. Chapter 12. The Truth That Shatters. The night hung heavy over Kembleford, a pall of fog rolling off the hills like a shroud, creeping through the quiet streets and penetrating even the stoniest of hearts. Father Brown strolled towards the church, his breath curling in the biting air, when he spotted a flicker of light through the suffocating mist. Curiosity piqued, he detoured toward the manor of the late Lord Farnsworth, a sprawling relic now peering through gnarled branches like a watchful spectre. As he approached, the churning remnants of the village gossip echoed in his mind. The recent death of Lord Farnsworth had ushered in a harrowing string of incidents. Missing valuables, a flurry of accusations, and darkened whispers about the circumstances surrounding his demise. But it was the ominous light that beckoned him now, an uninvited glow that shivered through the gloom like an unsaid secret. Pushing open the creaky front door, he stepped inside, greeted by the scent of decay that clung to the air. An ornate chandelier hung above, its crystals coiling with dust, but it was the atmosphere that chilled him, a tangle of secrets and sorrow. The flickering light came from the drawing room. As he crept toward it, he heard hushed voices, a tension coiling between them like a tightrope ready to snap. "Will you stop this nonsense, Agnes?" A voice broke through the murmur, sharp, jagged. It belonged to Mrs. Edith Mulliner, the late Lord's housekeeper, whose loyalty had become increasingly suspect in light of recent events. "We can't hold this truth forever. The villagers are growing restless." "What truth?" came a muffled reply, faint yet heavy with urgency, from Agnes Wilcox, the manor's governess. "It will only bring more scandal. Is that what you want? Chaos?" Father Brown hesitated outside the door, piecing together the implications. The truth? Chaos. It was his instinct to uncover such matters, yet he knew the weight of unearthing secrets could crack the strongest foundations. With a gentle push, he nudged the door open. The women startled, their eyes glinting with an unreadable mix of fear and relief. "Father Brown!" Edith exclaimed, her voice trembling. "You've come at an inconvenient time. This is precisely the right time," he interjected, observing the paradox in their expressions. The flickering candlelight danced over their faces, revealing the apprehension lurking beneath their surfaces. As the three engaged in uneasy pleasantries, Father Brown's attention was drawn to a small desk against the wall. A handwritten letter lay open, its ink still glistening in the minimal light. "What's this?" he prompted, pacing slowly towards it. "Just a correspondence," Agnes said, her voice somewhat strained. "Nothing of consequence." The priest's brow furrowed, and he moved closer. The pages revealed a hasty apology written by Lord Farnsworth to a mysterious recipient named A. His penmanship was shaky, betraying an inner turmoil. "This suggests he felt the need to cover something urgent. A reconciliation of sorts." He glanced at the two women, searching for signs. What did he wish to confess? Edith stepped forward, her hands trembling. "It's not mine to tell, Father. The late Lord had made enemies, many who were not as they seemed, but he was a good man." "Was he?" Father Brown interjected gently, coming to a sudden apprehension. "Or was he simply a man weighed down by the truths he courted, lives tangled in his past?" An audibly strained silence engulfed the room, the tension entwined into a thick fog that hushed even the creaking floors beneath their feet. "Edith, I know you loved him," Agnes stated, a subtle accusation wrapping around her words. "Perhaps that clouds your judgment." "And what do you know of love?" came Edith's retort, her eyes hardening into an icy glare. "He was lost, Agnes, both to himself and those around him." Father Brown's mind raced. The truth behind the late Lord's life was buried beneath layers of heartbreak, but the undercurrents between the two women spoke of bitter jealousy and secrecy that sparkled like shards of glass. "Tell me more of this conflict. What were you both guarding?" Out of breath, Agnes leaned against the desk, as if its antique surface might lend her strength. I was his friend. He confided in me about his past, things he wished to put behind him. But I fear—" Her words faltered, and the weight of an unsaid truth threatened to spill forth. "Father," Brown noticed the deepening welts beneath her eyes, the tension coiling ever tighter as if she were ready to break. "Is it possible there are things better left in the dark?" He pressed gently, an unyielding curiosity twinkling in his eyes. "Yes," Agnes suddenly cried, her face a mask of distress. "Enough. You need to leave. She dashed towards the door, and the sudden movement startled Father Brown. Why run unless you're afraid? His voice resonated like a bell through the atmosphere thick with secrets. What's buried in this house? I said enough, she shouted defiantly, slamming the door behind her, as though running from her own revelations. Father Brown stood still, a revelation hanging heavily in the air. A fragment of the letter still lingered in his mind, like the fading echo of a haunting memory. His heart raced as he considered the contents, not just of what had been said, but of what remained unsaid between the two women. Edith had loved Lord Farnsworth, and with that love came stark disappointment and buried truths, but it was the sudden solitude of the room that felt disquieting. Father Brown suddenly turned to the now dormant letter, still glistening amid the flickering light. He stepped closer, intent on deciphering the urgency in those fragile strokes of ink. As he lifted the page, something slipped from beneath the desk, landing gracefully on the floor. A small silver locket that glimmered even amid the gloom. Its surface was etched with initials. E.M. His heart raced anew, its weight a potential key, a clue to further unravel the tapestry of secrets. Father Brown gripped the locket tightly, its significance dawning upon him with pressed urgency. Perhaps the darkness of the truth only deepened when faced with the light. Could this locket be the very thread that shatters the fragile facade? And as he turned, footsteps echoed down the hallway, a storm of emotion hurriedly blooming in the manor as shadows gathered ahead, a confrontation brewing fierce behind the creaking walls. With the locket warm in his palm and the night's secrets swirling about him, Father Brown braced himself for the revelations just beyond the threshold, the mystery teetering on the brink of collapse.